Hi everyone, here's the video overview for Monday, April 20th. We'll start with our 6th decimals homework sheet. Before the kids start their independent reading and reading workshop today, they'll do an activity designed to help them reflect on their identity as a nonfiction reader. Part 3 is going to be the first time that the kids use our new Google Classroom. So in the past, when I've done activities such as the rocks activity the kids are going to do, I've sent home a PDF with the pages scanned from the science textbook and the written questions. Both the pages and the written questions will be on Google Classroom, and the kids will actually fill in the blanks of the outline by typing on Google. Finally, we will have the third and last day for editing with our writing workshop stories. I mentioned in my email that I sent previously that we'll be having a couple lessons per week in each subject area, but many lessons will involve more than one video. So the videos you receive this week and emails will be very similar to what you've been receiving up until this point. Here's our math warm-up. It shows the perimeter of 4 rectangles, and go ahead and pause so the kids can go ahead and give this a shot, ranking them from largest to smallest, keeping in mind that the information that they're given is in different units. Okay, on the far left, you'll see what I simply copied from the slide before. The difficulty of trying to compare these numbers the way they are is that they're not in like units, and it's always a great idea to put them in like units to facilitate an easier comparison. The middle column shows everything as a fraction, and then the far right column shows everything as a decimal. So however the kids did it, you can see the order on the far right, 1, 2, 3, 4, ranked from largest to smallest. The lesson today builds on what we did before spring break, helping the kids gain comfort with decimals involving ones, tenths, and hundredths. So you see on the top left, the grid only shows 10 vertical bars. On the right, it also shows 10 vertical bars, but they're broken up into squares. And it's really important that the kids understand that one vertical bar is the same as 10 small squares, so they understand that 10 hundredths equals 1/10. So on the bottom left, you see the 1 representing the complete one hole that was shaded in. And then on the right side, we have 2 bars and 2 squares. So that tells us that we need to put a 2 in the tenths place for the 2 bars, 2 in the hundredths place on the right for the 2 squares. Altogether, it is 22 hundredths. And as we've been practicing, we want the kids to get really comfortable going back and forth smoothly between tenths and hundredths. One note, when the kids are doing their work today, anytime there's a complete grid that's filled in, they don't need to go through the process of filling it in. I was doing that on the answer keys before the break, and it really takes a long time. So it's perfectly fine if they simply put an X, but they only can do it if it's a complete one hole, not a fraction of the grid. So for example, the one you're seeing here shows 1 whole and 1/10, 1/100th, 1 and 11 hundredths. In addition to the grids, many times the kids will see decimals represented in number lines. Generally, the jump from 0 to 1 is the smoothest because it's one whole. Then the next jump is tenths. That's also fairly smooth because the number line has marks that are made in tenths. So after the one whole, they're adding 2 tenths. So they just jump to the right 2 marks. The trickiest one is the hundredths because the marks are not already made there, so they need to estimate. If it was 5 hundredths, for example, then the dot would need to be halfway between 2 marks. Here it's 22 hundredths, so the 2 hundredths are going to be closer to the 2 tenths than to the 3 tenths. That'll take some practice and perhaps some guidance for you if the kids are asked to place the different decimals. Here's another example with 3.46. The 3's already done, so we would make a jump of 4 tenths, and then 6 hundredths is a little bit more than halfway between 1/10 and the other, so the dot should be a little bit to the right of the halfway point. Sometimes it helps to draw this squiggly line vertically through the decimal point to help the kids understand that a decimal point separates whole numbers from parts. That can help them with their understanding quite a bit. So with the example here, 3 means 3 ones or 3 wholes, and then they don't quite have a fourth. They have 8 tenths of the next one, so it would be 3.8. 3 representing the whole numbers, the 0.8 representing the parts. Now at the top, the kids are going to see a 3 and an 8, and then that's the same for the next one. But it's not the same number because here it's hundredths. And it's so important that the kids don't accidentally say 3.8 when it's hundredths. It needs to be 3.08. Placing the 0 in the tens place is so important so that each number is placed in the proper position. And again, you see the squiggly separating wall separating the whole numbers from the parts. Bringing it all together, you see the 3.8 on the top left, 3.08 on the top right, and then on the bottom I added in 3.80 so that the kids could see how 80 hundredths is the same as 8 tenths. The 0 to the right of the 8 is not needed. It's considered simpler form if we actually write it without it. So I'd prefer the kids to begin to get into the habit of writing it as 3.8 instead of 3.80, but they are both correct. The answer key is the next slide. Reading workshop is the next slide. In class, we were going to do an activity where the kids were going to discuss and reflect on their identity as nonfiction readers. So you can go ahead and take a look at the following blurb here on top. And then here are the questions, because we typically read way more fiction than we do nonfiction, and the kids get to know themselves pretty well as fiction readers. These questions give them a chance to get to know themselves well as nonfiction readers. The bottom part is especially important, and even though I'm not asking the kids to write down their answers to all the questions, they certainly can if they want. I would like them to consider jotting down 2 goals that they have between now and the end of the year about nonfiction. For web readings today, I am asking the kids to try to build in some nonfiction. Maybe not exactly half their time with fiction and half with nonfiction, but we want to make nonfiction a regular part of our reading diet, if you will. Okay, I mentioned that the science today is the first time that the kids will be doing it in Google Classroom, not using a PDF as we have been doing it. So first I'd like to see what the kids might already know about rocks. They can think about it, they can jot down some notes, they can talk about it with you. And then the science pages are ones that I uploaded into our Google Classroom under the topic of science, and I uploaded it as a material. That means it's something that the kids can have access to, but they don't write on or type on or alter in any way. The outline itself should be a lot smoother than the one they did about minerals before spring break, because that one had a lot of flexibility or ambiguity as far as what the kids felt was important enough to write down. These are pretty much taken from the text. So when the kids come to the part of the identified pages, they should find the answers fairly smoothly and be able to type them in on the rocks outline, which I posted as an assignment with a due date. So because this is going to take a little while, I've broken it into 2 days. So if the kids could do roughly half of it Monday, half of it Tuesday, I set the due date, which is something new for us. The due date will permit some smoother, probably more effective accountability as far as the kids turning things in when I would like them to. So as long as they turn it in by Wednesday, they will be all caught up with the rocks outline. In Writing Workshop, we are finishing up the editing of our fiction stories that the kids have been working on for the last few weeks. Previously, we focused on black on the editing checklist that I've showed you. We focused on indenting paragraphs for dialogue and for avoiding the block paragraphs so the kids don't have paragraphs that are too long and focus on multiple topics. Second day, we moved to punctuation and capitalization. If the kids need to go back and finish any of that, please be sure they do that as soon as possible, because our big event this week is our writing celebration, which is coming up on Friday, and I'll be giving more information about how we're going to be doing that. It's going to be a really cool thing. Today's focus is going to be spelling. Now, this sheet was created before the kids had Chromebooks and they wrote their work on paper. And it called for them to look at their work on the paper, pointing to each word one at a time. And if there's any word they weren't sure about, I asked them to circle it. Then they would go to the dictionary and look it up. Now, the process is different. The kids are more than welcome to use any kind of online dictionary or spell check. The kids have had great success with this throughout the year, so I'm not worried about it at all. Whatever seems to work with them is great. After they do the spelling part, I do ask that they go back one more time to read the entire story from beginning to end. That extra step makes a big difference as far as the effectiveness of the editing. And then I also encourage them to find a partner. A fellow student would be amazing if we could do that, or someone at home would be great. One thing that I do want to share with you as far as a spelling strategy is something that's worked very well for many kids in the past. It's called backwards editing. The issue with editing is when we read it, sometimes we start by focusing on the spelling. For example, I'm looking at each word one at a time. One, I know that's correct. Day, I know that's correct. I know that's correct. But then as we keep going, we stop looking one at a time and we start reading. And once we start reading, we focus so much on the meaning, we lose sight or can lose sight of the fact that we're supposed to be editing for spelling. So, one great idea is either one paragraph at a time or one page at a time to go in reverse order because it's not how the brain usually processes information. And if we start at the bottom right and look at the word slide, and then we look at the, and then we look at to, and then we look at heading, it's going to generally lead to more effective editing because there's no way to focus on meaning since there is no meaning when we look at the words going from right to left and from bottom to top. So this is certainly something that the kids are welcome to try when they do their editing for spelling. Thanks.